Hello everyone, welcome to another tutorial. This is tutorial number 5, bathroom tiles. This one is going to be a little bit more straightforward. So I'm not going to be explaining the simple things that we've done in all the previous tutorials. This one has a lot of detail, but a lot of it's pretty repetitive. So I'm not going to be going over basic notes like scan and levels and stuff like that. But I will be showing you guys the values that I use. But for the most part, I do want to try and keep this one moving along because this one is a longer one. But again, it's just a lot of repetitiveness with like different noises and stuff. Because the bathroom tiles are pretty simple, and a lot of the detail for this one is going to be in the grout in between. Not so much in like the tiles because they're just a shape with flat surface with a little bit of noise. But yeah, a lot of the work here is going to be on the grout and the roughness. Alright, so let's get started. So as usual, we're just going to start with a shape. Let's do 0.937 on the scale for this shape. Then we're going to do a bevel. Then we're going to blend that by itself. This is going to go on the top. And then this blend's going to be screen. I've realized that when trying to raise, alright, let's plug this in so we can visualize it. Oh, let me get the setup first. Okay, so this is the setup, the usual setup for the tutorials. Just to keep it nice and neat. Since we don't have any metallic on this one, we're just going to leave it at the bottom with a value of 0. Our normal is going to be set to 3. Our ambient occlusion using HBAO is going to be a height depth of 0.0025. And then we just have this levels here as a placeholder for everything to plug into. Nothing really special here. For our material setup here, for like our height scale and stuff, I think we're going to do 1.5 on the height scale. And then I'm going to do 6 on the tessellation factor. 6 or 8 is usually my go-to. Alright. So I've noticed that using screen works best when trying to just simply raise the bevel by itself rather than add. This works best. So from now on, I'm going to be using screen. We're trying to do this this concept of trying to raise something. Okay. So after we have our blend here, we're going to do a blur. Right now we're creating the tile. And then we're going to blend the blur and the scan together. And then this blend is going to be set to multiply. And then we're going to need a levels here. And then just to go over what we just did here, we started with a shape, so our tile. Then we beveled it to kind of give it the smoothing. Then I screened that with this to increase the elevation of the tile to give it a base. So then here's our tile that's been beveled and raised. Then we blur that a little bit more. Then I get the histogram to move the position all the way up. Technically you can turn the contrast up as well. And then we multiply it. I use this scan to give it its shape again. And then here with the levels, I just lower it to 0.5. Because I don't want this tile to be all the way up there. I want it to be closer to the bottom. Okay. After that, we're going to do a tile sampler. Plug this in here. Okay. Now for the X and the Y, we're going to go with 6. 6 by 6. Let's make sure we change our pattern here to pattern input. We're just using 1, so 1 is fine here. We're going to change the scale to 1.0525. And then we're going to change our position random just a tiny bit, because these were, placed by humans, so it's going to be a little bit imperfect. So we're just going to add a little bit of randomness in their position. And then a little bit, very, very subtle rotation random, 0.00125. Just a tiny little bit of variation on the rotation, so they're not perfectly straight. And I think that's it for the tile sampler. So now we should have this. So that's pretty much it for the tiles. Except we have one issue. That I'm going to show you the issue before we fix the issue. So let's say we pull out of this guy and we try and get a mask like this. So by increasing the position and the contrast to 1, we're maxing out wherever there's grayscale value, and we're getting like the max distance or the max range of our tiles. Now if we were to do a flood fill, some of these guys are touching some of these tiles. So if we go back to our scan here and we get really, really close, you can see that there isn't a dividing line here. Even though in our tiles, like in our tile sampler, there is, but because this scan is pushing all the way out, we lose that. So you could play around with the position slider here and just do just enough to kind of get your flood fill back. But some of them might need more. So instead of playing around and playing around with the slider, I'm just gonna leave it at 1, and I'm gonna show you guys how to fix that, because it's a problem you might often run into, especially when we're working with bevels, because you're going to have tiles or shapes that are going to be trying, or they will like grow into each other a little bit, and especially with smooth shapes, the smooth edges might like bleed into each other, and when you're trying to get a clean mask like this, you're gonna have issues like this. So what I did was, let me unplug this. I put the tile sampler through a normal, and I left it at 1, and I'll plug that in there. And this, just like any other normal, except after the normal, I'm gonna run it through a curvature. And like we said, a curvature is going to detect the creases and the edges sticking out. I forgot the terms again. So basically, your edges facing out are going to be white, and the inside is going to be black. So then once we have that information, we're able to do a scan again. And this one, I'm going to leave the position at 0.5, but I'm going to turn the contrast all the way up. And then this is going to basically give us what we need. It's not perfect, but it does create a dividing line between the two tiles, which is exactly what we need. So if we look at, let me bring this guy over here so we can compare the two scans. So this is the original one. Let me find, okay, so here's the problem, right? We don't have the line going this way, dividing these two tiles, but here we do. So I'm gonna unplug that guy again. And then we're going to need a blend here. And obviously, you guys probably know what we're going to do. We're going to end up multiplying. Whoops. Okay. So now, so you can see here, this is where they would have been attached. Because you can see here that it's not black. It's a value of, it's a value above 0. So then a scan is going to detect that. Well, this is the good one, but if we brought back the old one, it's gone. But this one does bring it back because of our normal and curvature setup here. So now that we do have that dividing line, now we can do a scan off of this guy. And this is going to be our main guy here, because this guy would be our main guy, but you know, he's blending between two tiles. So this one's going to be important. So this is going to be 0. Okay. Right. So we have our scan, and we're going to plug that in. Leave that at 1, 1. And now we have our lines fixed. Okay. We're going to come back to this flip fill in a little bit, but for now, we're just going to leave them as is. We are going to create a, jeez. There we go. We're going to put a, what are these called again? A frame around this guy. Because this is going to be our tile mask. So whenever we need the mask of like tile and, yeah, just tile, this is going to be it. So I'm going to put a green one around this one so that it's easier for you guys to find and for me to find and I'm not getting lost. Okay, so yeah, we'll come back to this, but for now, let's just continue on. Let's move back. This is going to be a very long boy, but again, it'll be simple. Okay, so now that we have our tiles, first thing we want to do is add some surface noise. Let me pull up my reference so I can show you guys, because this one I actually used the reference for. Okay, so for those who don't know, this is a program called PureRef, and basically what it lets you do is create like a collage where you can just copy paste images, your own or from like Google or Pinterest or whatever, and just drag them into here, and then you can save them all in a file, and it makes it very nice for you to like keep track of your references. So these are my references that I took pictures of. So I took some for the grout detail, the roughness, some hair references, some shapes that I wanted to make sure I had, and color. So for this first thing that we're about to do, if you get really close on the tile, you can see these little tiny like wavy little details. So from afar, the tile might look flat, but if you get really, really close, you'll notice these little wavy guys. So that's what we're going to try and do right now. So I'm going to move this guy over here. And we're going to start with a Perlin noise. We're going to do a scale of 64 and a disorder of 0.2. I don't think disorder really matters too much. And then we're going to do a levels afterwards. Then we're going to blend this. We're going to get a 2D transform after the levels. Then we're going to plug the transform up there. These are the values for the transform. I think what I did is I just rotated it 90 degrees or maybe 180 degrees. But the point is that I'm trying to get rid of some of them. So I'm multiplying it by itself, except a rotated version of itself, and then it gets rid of some of them. So before, after. Then we're gonna blur it. Then we're gonna do another levels. Then we're gonna blur again. Then we're going to slope blur. We're gonna be using max mode for this one. And then I'm gonna do a clouds 1. Then I'm gonna blur that cloud and plug that into our slope. So you can see here we're like just slightly deforming it. Then we're gonna do another levels after it. Then we're gonna vector warp. You guys already know why. Which technically I don't think we need for this one because the details are so small that no one's gonna really notice that the noise carries from one to the other, but you know, just good practice. So in order to continue, we're gonna need to plug in our color, which is gonna be from our flood fill. So we're gonna go back to our flood fill from before. And then from the flood fill, we're gonna do a flood fill to random color. Then we're gonna do a distance. And this is gonna go in the bottom. For this distance, we're using 5,000. And then I need to plug in the mask. So I'm just gonna drag this out. We're gonna be using this a lot. So actually, I'm just gonna move these guys down a little bit. Just give myself some room. Then we're gonna plug in from this mask, from the green framed node there. Now we have our distance pushed out for the pixels to be pushed out for our tiles. And we're going to drag this out because we're going to be using this a little bit. And now we can plug in. And then this is set to 10. Alright. Now we are going to do... I shouldn't have done it this way, but we're going to actually move this guy down a set. And then here we're going to do another slope blur. And this one is going to be 32 and 125 with min. Well, tempo is always set to 32 with min like that. And this is actually going to go into the bottom. And we're going to plug our main tiles, our main road coming from shape into the top. Because we're trying to create some edging. And actually, this isn't for the, yeah, this is not the surface detail that I was talking about. Apologize for that. We're working on, let me bring this over here. Yeah, we're not working on the surface. I don't know why I thought we were. We're working on this, like having some chipping, and you can see here how like these tiles are not like perfect. It goes like, there's like some up and downs on the edges. So that's what we're doing. Not this wavy stuff yet. That comes in shortly. So that's what we're trying to do here. Oh, and now this makes sense why this is supposed to actually be afterwards, not before. There we go. Okay, yeah, now that makes sense. I was like, why did I have it this way? Because I thought we were doing the noisy stuff. Okay, then after our slope here, just make sure you guys have the settings. We're gonna do a blend. and this is going to be for the main track here. Okay, and then this is going to be on top, and then this is set to min darken. Min darken is a like reduction in height, similar to subtract. And then we are going to use a mask because we don't want this to be on all the tiles. Because in my references, it's only on like a couple. So I don't want this to be on every single one. So we're going to create a mask for that. Let's go back to our flat fill here. And we're going to set up a couple other things that we're going to be using in the future, which isn't going to be too much. We're going to need a purlin here with a scale of 128. We're going to do a flood fill to gradient. We're going to plug this into the angle input, which is the middle input here. We're going to plug this flood fill into the top. And I'm turning up my angle variation, my angle image input multiplier, because I'm using the angle variation, and I'm using this purlin noise to dictate my randomness, my gradient randomness. Then from this flood fill, we're going to do a flood fill to random grayscale. Then we're going to do another distance and plug in this into the bottom. And we plug this guy again into the top. Max distance of 5,000. Then from this guy, we're going to do a histogram select with these settings. And then we're going to do another one of these two guys here. We're going to set the random seed for this guy to 8. And then we're going to do another select for this guy. And then the settings for this guy is going to be 0.73 and 1.1. Like that. And then we're going to do a histogram select. And then this guy's going to plug into it. Like that. Okay. Alright, so that's all the stuff that we're going to need for this graph setup already. So which one do we need to plug into this mask? That is going to be the last guy. So this guy, we're just going to drag him out, create a connector. And we're going to pull from it and plug it into the bottom. So now we're getting this like chipping on these white ones. So these three. You can see this one has one here. And then, what was the other one? This guy. He should have one somewhere. It's probably just very subtle. Or maybe he got lucky and we didn't get any blurring on that one. So there should be something there. But anyways, yeah, we don't want them on all of them, so we're using that select to create a mask to tell it to which ones to affect. Then we're going to go with a purlin noise, set to the scale of 32, then a histogram scan, then another vector, and I think this one's going to be the noise. Actually, no, this is more chipping. And let's just use this guy again. Let's move this connector forward. We're going to do another slope blur grayscale set to min. Then a levels. Sometimes the levels are set to the default value because I end up not using them. But, you know, you can play around with the slider and see if maybe there's something else you want to do with them. And let's make sure we frame these before we forget. So this one's going to be large tile chipping. Okay. And then we have our large chipping, our medium tile chipping, and then we're going to have our small. So for our medium tile chipping, you can see the difference here. So this is before, and then this is after. So you can see there's like a little bit of missing tile here. So it's all about the subtle, small differences. Okay. Another purlin noise, followed by levels, followed by blur, another levels, then our favorite vector warp, alright. Then we're going to do a slope blur scale on the bottom, same as the last step. Oops. So you can see these are the smaller ones now coming in. Let's bring in our levels. And then this guy's set to min darken again. All these three are set to min darken because they're all doing the same thing, but you know, different values or different sizes and stuff. All right. Now for this one, we are going to need our green mask here, our tile mask. So let's pull this guy out. And we're going to pull up here and do an invert grayscale. Then from that, we're going to do a blur. And then a histogram scan. And then this is going to go into the opacity. Now, what's happening here is the small chipping, but I created a mask, which is this guy, to cut off the chipping so it doesn't go past a certain point. So this chipping would normally go through, but using this mask here, we cut it off so it doesn't go all the way up the tile. And we created this mask by taking our original mask. These are the original, the full extent of the tile. And then I inverted it because I wanted to be the in-between. So the grout, I blurred it a little bit. Now by blurring it, I extend the maximum edge. So then my scan is now farther than it was here because with this blur, I am able to extend the range. So now position 1 on the scan is going to be all the way out to here. There's like another very thin line here. You guys probably can't see it, but. And then I'm using this extended edge to be in here. So blur is really good for extending, you know, edges of grayscales. If you need to like expand it and you're already maxed out with a value of white and 0. You can blur it, and then you can use the levels to get more out of it, or a scan again. Okay, now we're going to do the tile surface detail. So let's plug this in here, plug this in there. And this guy's going to be set to multiply. So right now it's multiplying by black, so it's getting rid of everything because it's multiplying by 0. So we're just going to get started here with a purlin into a 2D transform. And I think for this one, I just multiplied it a couple, or divided it to make it bigger. And you can see here by this value, I don't think I hit it 8 times, but I think every time I hit divide, it multiplies it by 2 technically, or it's twice as big. So this means I did it 4 times, I think. Don't check my math, please. For this guy, same thing, except I think I just rotated it. Yeah, I think I rotated it 180. Yeah. And then I'm gonna blend these two together. Now there's no right or wrong for this. I kind of just played around with different values and just different noises and just multiply, subtract it, and just try to get something a little bit random for this one. And I ended up just taking both of these and then just basically keep leaving the blended copy, and I just did a opacity of 0.5, which just means it's 50% of this one, 50% of this one. And it gave me this. So there was this, and it kind of gave me this. It's probably the same if I just would have just done one of these, but you know, that's where I landed. We'll do an auto levels, then we'll do a blur, and then a levels. Oops. And yeah, you don't have to get this granular. Like I said, if I do go this granular, it's probably because I just did a auto levels, and then probably did an auto levels, and then I edited some of them. So you can just round up. We can probably just do like 3 and 3. But yeah, you guys can just round up. Alright, now we have our detail back because all we did was just multiply, and now we have something to multiply by. And the reason why this is so white is because we don't want to multiply by too low of a number. Otherwise you'll get you'll be deleting too much. So now if we look at this at an angle, you can see that we have some noise. So before, where it was flat, and now we have a little bit of noise up there. So that's our tile surface detail. Now this is where we slope some of our tiles, and we've done this in previous tutorials. So I'm going to go a little bit faster here. So let's get number 5 here. Now for this guy, we are going to be pulling from the top one, the top gradient. So from here, all the way over here. Then we're going to pull out of this guy into a levels. And then this is going to go plug in there. And then for the levels, these are the settings. The only thing that really changed is the level out low. And then the blend here is set to multiply again. And we're going to plug this up to the top. And again, I don't want to have my sloping on all of them because I want to leave a couple of these out because I want to do a more dramatic slope for a few of them. So this is like my general slope, and I'm going to have a few of these left out. So the left out ones are going to be the third one down. So if we go here, so from this guy here, third one down, we're going to pull out. And then these guys are going to go into the opacity. So now you can see that if I unplug the opacity thing, all of them are affected by the slope. And now these guys from the mask are not, because these are going to get a more dramatic slope right now. So number 6. So I call these specific because these are like basically the inverse of that mask. And then for this guy, it's going to be the same thing as here. Oops. And then this is going to go into a levels. And these are the settings for the level. Now this is going to go on top. And then like I said, here we're using this mask, right? Because we wanted to exclude these 4. So now I want to choose these 4 for the next one. So for this one, I'm going to do an invert. That way it's the opposite of these guys. And then this is going to go into the opacity. So here we omitted those 4, and then here we're using those 4. And you can see that the gradient on these guys is a lot more noticeable than these generalized ones, because these are very subtle, very shallow slopes, and then these are a little bit more drastic. Okay, so that's it for the slope. That's number 6. Now we're moving on to number 7. And then number 7 is going to be the same thing, except we're going to be doing this with height. So like elevation. So we're gonna, do like a generic one with a few of them not included, and then we're gonna do another one where it's those few. Same thing as we did here. So for this one, we're gonna be using this guy here. This is gonna go up to a levels. Like that. Same thing. I kind of evened it out because I didn't want it to be too drastic. Because obviously our bathroom tiles aren't going to have super varying degree of differences in height, just very subtle. And then we need to go to the second to last. So pull from this guy. And then this is going to be the mask for the first one. And then I'm going to turn the slopes off by Shift D. So then we have all the tiles sitting at the same elevation. And then here, some of them are decreased, except for these guys. So this guy, this guy, this guy, and these 2 all have the same elevation at the moment. So we're going to go here, and then we're going to add number 8. Set to multiply again. Let's set these 2 guys up again. Okay. And then we are going to use the same guy here. To go up there. And then for this guy, we're going to use the inverse. So this is like, mask A, and then this is the inverse of it. Plug this into the top, and then this into the bottom. And now those guys, again, same thing. They're a little bit more drastically lowered or raised. Okay, so that's it for slope and height. So let me bring these guys back. Shift D again. Okay, now we can move into number 9. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the tiles. This is where we're going to start mixing in the grout, the stuff that's going to be in between that holds the tiles together. So let's copy paste number 9. Like that. Okay, now we're going to do a white noise fast, which is just looks like this. Then I'm going to hit it with a 2D transform. I scaled it down, or I zoomed in. I got got more of those guys. Then I blurred it, and then I used the histogram range to even out the noise so it's not so black and white. So it's a little bit more controlled. I lowered the range. Then we have a levels here. And then this is going to plug into the top. And then this is set to max lighten. So now this gives us our grout. And then we have a simple bass noise setup. Now this right here, this level is what's going to be controlling grout height. So I'm going to call this one. This one isn't not going to get a number because I didn't number it on my end, but I'll do it for you. I'll label it for you guys. So this is what's going to determine your height. If you move this guy up, your grout is going to overtake the tiles. And if you want to lower your grout, then you can just lower it like that. Okay. Now, similar to the last tutorial, tutorial 4, the dark tiles, we're going to create another mask that's going to be just for the grout, which is going to be an important one. So I'm going to create a connector back here, and I'm going to spawn in a blend, and then this guy is going to go on the top, and the levels here, the grout noise is going to go in the middle, and then this is going to be set to subtract, and it's going to give us this. But we need the mask, so we don't want any blurred values. So we're going to do a histogram scan and set it to 1, 1. And I'm going to put a green frame around it and call it grout mask. So now this is our mask for the grout, and if we invert it, then it'll be the mask for the tiles. After this, if we invert it, it creates the opposite mask. But remember, these masks are for after grout. So if you need a mask for before this stuff gets added, then you're going to want to go to this guy here. But if you need to make sure that your mask accounts for the grout, then you need to go here, because this is going to update based on whether you lower or raise your grout height. All right, so we're running out of room. So let's just grab everything and move it back. Okay. Now we're going to move on to number 10. Okay, we need a little bit of room. Now I know we really haven't covered anything too many new things, but this is where I think a lot of some cool stuff will be done with the grout. So we're going to need a non-uniform blur grayscale, and we're going to plug the grout mask, the green framed, into both of these. And we've done this in previous tutorials, where it blurs it by itself, and we're able to get this like this raised effect, right? Where our mask is flat, and this is the edges between the tile and the grout. And then with this, we're able to create like a bump. So if you were to read this from the side, it would read like this. So before the blur, it's flat, and then afterwards, when we blur it by itself, it does this. And then this is the tile. So this blur gives us this green bump. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so we're gonna get a crystals 1, scale of 32. We're gonna need a blend here set to multiply. A clouds 1, and then this is gonna plug into the top, because I wanna multiply and get some noise out of this crystal, so it's not so clean. And then I drive this through a slow blur. This goes into the top, this goes into the bottom. And then we need another slope blur over here. This is going to go on top. Then we're going to drag this out this way, because we're going to reuse this cloud 1. We're going to do a transform 2D. And this transform 2D is just rotated. Then we're going to blur it. Then we're going to blend it by this cloud 1 again. And we're going to set this blend to multiply. And then this is going to feed into the bottom. And I'll go over what this is all, or we can start going over it a little bit. So here we created the bump, like I mentioned in the paint drawing. Then here we set our slope blur to min so that it takes away. If this was set to add, it would break the bounds of the grout. So here we break up some of the grout a little bit, and then we do it again, just to kind of add some more variety to our grout. Then we need a purlin noise here. This blend set to subtract. We're going to need a levels for this purlin here. And then this is going to go to the top. We're going to subtract. So we're just subtracting some noise to give it more variety. That way it's not the same level of flatness everywhere. We get some more variation via the cuts here. And then we multiply or subtract. Whatever there's white is being subtracted. So here it's going to be a little lower because there's white there. Then we're going to take a transform 2D, plug this levels into it. Here we just make a tile more to get more noise. Then we do a subtract again. We subtract more of it. So now we're subtracting like smaller details. Before we were subtracting this. Now we're subtracting this. We're subtracting a more noisy noise. Noisy noise. Then we're going to blur. Okay, we're going to blur that. And then we're going to need a blend here. I'm going to turn this blend off for now. We're going to need a levels. And then this is going to go into this guy, into the top. And it's going to be set to subtract. Now there's one thing missing here. We're going to use this mask a lot, so I'm just going to make a long road for it. Probably need to go further than this, but we're on our limit here. I'm going to create a connector right here, and then this is going to feed into the top here. And then I'm going to reveal this guy. So after we're done with all of this, which I'll go over in a second, oops, you can see that our grout now has some more variation. I'm going to turn this off. So you can see here, it's all flat. And now we have some more interesting grout. You can see our grout even has like a little like little shallow valley here, which is going to be the opposite of this. So now there's a little bit of like this little trench, because when you apply grout, you run your finger through it to kind of push it in, and you create this like, crevice, curved crevice or whatever tool you use. So the way we did all this, like we said here, we created our bump here. Then we just kind of took a slow blur and we cut away from it. Then we subtracted some noise just to kind of give it more variation. We ran it by through some more variation. Then we blurred it a little bit. It's fine. And when you finish plugging all these things in, I should actually like click on some of these stuff and then just hide it, and then kind of see what the difference is. So you kind of see like, okay, this was done for this reason, and then maybe you prefer it without it or with it. But you know, here we smoothed it out a little bit. And here, what I did was I multiplied the mask, our grout mask. So anything that's black is going to get taken out. And the reason why I did this here is because when you blur, the blur node is going to blur your white value or your grayscale in both directions because it's just blurring, right? So like you can see here that it spills past this mask. So it would be spilling onto the tile. And I didn't want that because I didn't want the tile to be overtaken by the grout. So after this blur, I knew that it was spilling over to the tile, so I used the mask and I multiplied it to get rid of the the spill and keep it contained within the mask of the grout. And then here, we have our intensity, and then we call this one the grout dips. So this is what gave it its took it from flat to having some more interesting shape. All right, we're getting we're past the halfway point, so that's good. Now here we are going to pull from this 2D transform and do another 2D transform. And this one is just 0.5 of itself. And then we're going to need a slow blur again. So again, this is all just very repetitive, nothing too crazy going on here. Set to min. So normally it's min because I don't want to, I want to cut away from the grout mask, not go past it into the tile. At least not right now. We will do that later for other specific things. So then we invert this. Then we put this through a multiply blend. Then we need to pull from our main road here. And then let's bring in our main blend, or number 11. Go. So then we're gonna need a crystal 1. And we're gonna slow blur it again into a blur. Into a blend, set to multiply. And again, every time you see me multiply by or via this this mask is because I'm trying to contain it to the grout, and I don't want it to extend to the tile. And then this guy's set to multiply with an opacity of 0.5. And then here we're going to reuse our last Perlin noise. So I'm going to drag out, place it down here. And then I'll go over this in a second. And then this is going to go into the top. And then this has to subtract. So here, this is a very subtle change. Let's find where some of it is. So you can see there's a little bit right here. So let's find that. Here's one. So if we look at our reference, and we go into our grout references, you can see kind of like the grout is peeling off a little bit here, and it's creating like this little valley behind it. We can also find like these little pockets on the edges of the grout with the tile, like right here. These very subtle details is what we were trying to create in this last bit here. So let's put this back over here. And the way we did that was we took our mask, we slow blurred it with, a prelet noise, and we got these wavy effects. Then I used a scan to tighten it up, but not all the way. The more I go to a lower position, the more it opens up. So I wanted to be very subtle. So then I inverted it. So this creates like this slope, right? Because we're using a slope blur. Then I scan it to a high amount. So if we look at the mask for the grout, it ends here, right? Straight line. But if we look at the scan, there's like a thin line or a thin line of pixels, and then these guys are creating a pocket. And when I invert it, you can see it. So then after I invert it, I multiply it by the mask again, and then that leaves me just the pocket. Because I basically got rid of the grout and I got rid of the tile. So then I'm left with basically just the hole in the grout. So then I slope blurred it with this crystal one just to kind of move it around a little bit. And then again, because I moved it around with the slope blur, I multiplied it again by the mask to make sure that I removed the bounds of it. And then I multiplied that by the Perlin noise to kind of, instead of the pockets being flat, this kind of like adds some variation to the height of the pockets as well. And then this level just determines how strong the pockets are. So if I were to increase this, you can see that the pockets are deeper. I didn't want it to hit all the way to the bottom. I didn't want them to go all the way down to 0. Let's find one. I think this guy is, where is this guy? So this guy's like near the center. So this guy should be like right here. Yep. So then this determines the height, or yeah, all the way to the ground. I don't want it to be all the way to the ground. I want it to be kind of subtle. And that's what this is for. So now, we're stacking and stacking detail. Okay. And then you can probably smooth it, put a blur on it, and then mask it out again using the mask here, multiply it to maybe get a smoother one. And when you start seeing this jaggedness, that's because we're also working with 2K. In hindsight, I should have worked on this in 4K. But yeah, it's a little too late for that because I worked on this in 2K and I don't want to because there are some things you might have to tweak just because you're getting a lot more resolution. So some things that probably weren't noticeable before now will be. So we're actually going to increase our tessellation factor to 8 so that we get some more pixels, or not pixels, some more vertices in here. There you go. So now we're able to see it better. And then you could probably go higher if you like, if you have a higher end computer. I don't want my stuff getting hot. Okay, let's pick up the pace a little bit. So yeah, for the remainder of this, we're just gonna keep working on the grout. All right, we're gonna start picking up the pace here. I think we're at the 1 hour mark at this point. We're gonna do a non-uniform grayscale again. Plug this guy, the mask into itself again. We're gonna create that bump again. Just to create another layer of detail. We're gonna continue pulling from this Perlin noise, just to keep reusing it into a transform. Then this is gonna plug into the bottom of the new slope blur. Then we're gonna need a levels here. And then we're gonna create a little bridge up here. And this is set to subtract. We'll go over this at the end. Then we're gonna blur it. Then we're gonna blend it by a multiply. Then just move these guys down. Sorry, not here. Here. And then this is set to multiply. Then our levels. Then we need our, whoops, number 12. And then this is set to subtract. So here, same thing. We took the, we made the bump. Then we blurred it. Then we did the same thing when we like, we inverted it here. You can see that this is white. That means I hit the invert button here. That I subtract a little bit of itself from it. Then I blur it. Then here I multiply with this noise. And then I multiply again by the mask. Oops. And then I get these things with just to create some bumpiness, more bumpiness in our grout. Like for example, right here, you can tell it's kind of flat. It's kind of even, it's an even gray. And then we created this subtle slope here. And again, it's just all about adding more and more layers of detail. All right, so let's move along. We're gonna use a grunge spots here. And we're gonna bevel it. Then we're gonna slope blur it here. And now here we are going to pull from this clouds 1. So we're going to continue this just to make sure we're reusing things. You don't have to reuse if you don't want to, but it does help your graph, especially if you're working with 4K. If we were to be working with 4K and you know your graph starts getting more and more complicated, it'll start taking a toll. Okay, so let's go over here. Okay, right here. So then after this guy, we're going to do a histogram range. into a multiply again. Then we need a scan down here. This set to multiply, and there's a scan. So what we're doing here is we're taking these guys and we're evening them out with a range. And then I'm taking the bounds of these guys via this scan. And then I'm using this as a mask. And then you can see these spots are almost all the same level of gray, as opposed to here where they're varying levels of gray are a little different. Like this one's darker than, or this one here is darker than this one, and this one's darker than this one, and this one's darker than that. But by doing this little thing here where we put it through a range and we lower the contrast between those values and we kind of even them out, and then we multiply it by the range or by its bounds, then we're able to get a more even. These are all like almost all sitting at the same elevation, but not exactly. So yeah, instead of like them being at very big differences, now they're all kind of sitting at around the same level. And then we're going to multiply via our mask again, because we don't want anything spilling over. And then we're going to do our levels. And then we're going to do number 13 here. And then this is going to go on top. And this is set to subtract. So let's see what this did. So I'm just going to hide it and unhide it, hide it, unhide it. And you can see here there's a little bit more detail here. We're trying to get rid of the flatness. We're just trying to add some more variation scattered all around. So you can select. Always, if you want to see what it's, what is feeding into it, look at whatever you have before the levels, because this level is just really here as a slider, similar as like the opacity slider here, except I like to put it on the levels because I get more control. So if you were to increase this, then you get what's before it. So you can see here that it's like way more dramatic. So obviously, so if you want to see it like without this layer of like change, just look at here, find the noise. You're like, okay, where's this? Check here, and then check here, and it's like, okay, it's here. Because if you look at this one, you're gonna have a harder time because this is like a lowered, and you're gonna have a hard time finding it in there. Okay, let's grab all of this and keep moving back. Okay, we're gonna grab our number 14. Oh, I accidentally grabbed everything and moved it. Or I not until I snap, and that's gonna drive me nuts. Okay. Okay, there we go. Let's get rid of this guy. Okay. So now, past 13, we're going to start with a Perlin noise. Then a transform 2D. Show you guys this. Then a histogram scan. And another transform 2D. Then slow blur, min mode. And then we're going to have a similar setup to what we just happened to do in 13. This range is set to this scan to that, and then this is set to multiply again. Again, we're evening out the spots, so there's less degree of variance. Then we're gonna do another blend, set to multiply, and we're gonna pull from our mask again as usual. We're trying to keep it in. We're trying to keep it within the grout levels, and then this is gonna go on top. So this is going to be our chunky holes. Nothing too special for me to go over here, just more detailing. Wherever, I think it's like right here. Yeah. Okay, moving on to 15. We're going to start with a white noise fast node here. Then a transform 2D. Then a scan just to get some dots or some pixels. Then I ended up blurring it by 0.125 to give it some thickness. So before, just a pixel, and then here we kind of bubble it a little bit with a blur. And then we need a blend. And this blend set to multiply. And again, from the mask. Then we're going to need this here for later. Then after this blend, our levels. I don't think just a 0.1 down there. So here we just added these little details here, these holes. And they're all over the place. Because they can also be found like right here, just little dark spots. So I'm just trying to get some of that detailing in there. Okay, moving on to 16. 16 is a little bit more interesting. This one I will explain because this one's a little bit important. So I think earlier I pointed out the peeling in the grout. I think it was like right here. Now we're gonna do that, but it's not gonna be as clear just because we're doing 2K, but you'll be able to notice it. So same thing, we're gonna do a known blur to kind of get the bump going in our grout as usual, except we have different values this time to make it more intense because I want it to be a little tighter than the previous ones. And then we're going to do a scan afterwards. Then a blend set to subtract. And then we're going to pull out from here. And actually this is going to go on the bottom. And then this is going to go on the top. And you can see here that we are basically getting rid of the center stuff. So we took this gradient and we scanned it to get a solid mask. Then we subtracted that from that to get this. Then we're going to need a scan down here. Then we're going to continue this road. Then this is going to go into the scan. Then we're going to need a blend. And then this is going to go on top. And we're going to pull this out one more. And then this is going to go into the middle. Then we're going to get this very thin line. And then here we're going to need a Perlin noise. Like that. Get a 2D transform into a scan. Like so. And we're going to get this. Then this is going to go here. This is going to go here. This is set to multiply. Then this is going to go in the middle. And then this guy is going to go on top. This is set to subtract. You can see what's happening here. You just follow the line. Then we're going to need another. Let's move this guy down. Then this is going to go into the middle. We're going to pull from this Perlin noise out. This is set to multiply. Then from here, it's going to feed into a levels. Then from here, it's going to go on top. Then we're going to warp it. I know there's a lot right now, guys, but we're almost there with this part. And that's going to go into the bottom. Then we're going to, warp settings, just 0.075 into a multiply blend. And then we're going to get our mask, our grout mask as usual, just to make sure everything stays within the bounds. And then our levels, oops, not that, like that. And then this is going to go on top, like that. And then this is to add linear dodge, and then these are the settings for the levels. Okay, so let's see what it did first. Okay, so like for example, over here, if we zoom in, because we go here and we can find where whatever we did, where it's at. So let's find this in our 3D view. So this is the middle, and it's like right down there. So this is the middle, so it should be like over here. Around here somewhere. So you can see it right here. Like I said, it's hard to see because of our resolution, but if we turn our tessellation factor maybe up to 10, and then we change our height scale to 2, maybe it becomes more apparent. But you can see here that we got that peel effect looking. So before, after. And the way we did that, we started with our slope blur, or not a slope blur, our non-uniform blur grayscale. We did the bump thingy, then we created a mask out of it, and then we subtracted that mask from our original thing. Then we took our mask again here, which is I guess technically it's oh no it's not. Okay, we took this mask, which is a version of this guy, and then we did the same thing where we subtracted. Then we multiplied it by this noise, and the black obviously multiplied by black gives you black. So we, instead of having this going all over the place, we subtract the sum of it. So if I hide this, some of it might show, or more of it might show. And then we put that through a subtract, where we subtracted this from this. And we tightened up the peeling a little bit. Then here, we did the same thing as before. We multiplied some of it out, because we didn't want this much. So then like if we hide this, this is what it would look like without it. So then we lowered it, we multiplied some of it out, and then we warped it so that our peeling isn't in a straight line, and it's this kind of some waviness to it. But you can see here it's very subtle. So it adds some more curving to it. And then we masked it via our mask, and then we did our intensity here, and then that's how we got this. So you can see here that it's raised, and then it's like a little crevice because where the peeling is. Okay, we're almost at the end. There's 21, we're at 16. So 5 more, guys. So let's grab all this. And you might have an easier time following than me explaining it if you just, double click the nodes and just follow the line. Okay, let's do 17. This one's interesting too. This is actually something kind of cool that I learned for the brushed grout. Alright, I'm back. Had to take a small break. It's usually nap time around this time. Okay, so we left off at 17. Okay, yeah, we're almost done. So now we're going to use a Gaussian spots 2, and we're going to do a scan, and then a levels. Very subtle for this one. Oh wait, this is for 18. So we're actually going to just move this over here. And let me move over here. Okay, sorry. For this one, it's going to be Perlin. Like that, and then into a slope blur. And this one's a max. I'm going to change the mode to max for that one. And we're going to plug in our usual mask, our grout. Now, I'll explain this one. This one's a interesting one. I'm going to use a multiply blend. Uh, there, and then we're going to need an invert grayscale. And it's going to come from the mask again. And then this is going to plug back into the top here, and then this over here. And let me just think about this for a second. Oh, actually, we can just do a subtract. Instead of having to invert and multiply, we can just do a subtract. It'll give us the same result. Yeah. Save a node. Yeah, because if we're trying to get rid of the tiles, we can do a multiply. If we're trying to get rid of the grout, we can do a subtract. So we can save ourselves an invert there. All right, and then we'll need a levels after it. These settings. Then we need a black and white spots 2 into a transform 2D. 2 and 2 into a sharpen with a value of 1 on the sharpen, followed by a histogram scan of 0.2 and 0 into a blur into a levels, and then that's going to go into a multiply. Like that. And then we're going to multiply again just to make sure we're not getting anything over or anything in the tiles. Whoops. Actually, yeah, here I multiply via the main graph, not the mask. And I'll explain why in a second. Okay, let's keep moving. We're gonna do a white noise fast, followed by another histogram scan into a subtract blend. And then we're gonna blur it into a subtract with an opacity of 0.1 on this guy here. And if you're wondering, like, why do I sometimes use the opacity and why do I sometimes use the levels? I don't know, sometimes I'm feeling a little crazy. But they serve the same purpose. When you slide this guy down like we normally do, this is basically lowering the opacity. Okay, and then, yeah, and then this feeds into this. Okay. So, what we did here, find some of it. Is it there? Yeah, it is. Okay. So let's see the end result first. If you guys see this stuff right here. Okay, first of all, I don't think, yeah, our height scale should be 1.5, not 2. It's way too high. Okay. Okay, so what we did was adding this stuff here, and it's actually, if you notice, it's off the grout mask. Because if we look at our reference, what I was trying to do was where is he? I think he's over here under the color. Oh, should be here. Basically this stuff. So it's almost like some of the grout got stuck to the tile, and then it dried up. Now again, I'm working with 2K, so I can't get that much resolution out of it, but that's what we're trying to go for there. So how we did that was, again, we slope blurred the grout mask, except instead of doing min mode, we did max, because like we said, min cuts into the mask, right? And then max does outside, so towards the outside. And then blur, which is the default mode, does both. So this is both. This is just in, so it's like cutting within itself, within the mask, and then this cuts outside of the mask. So I'm trying to get some stuff outside. So that's why we're using max for this one. Then I subtract the mask because I don't need the grout. So I'm subtracting the grout out of it. So I'm only left with anything outside of the grout. Then I tighten it up because I don't want it to feather out all the way up to here. I wanted to keep it tight, just like in our reference. So then I carry that over to this multiply. And right now it's kind of solid looking, even though there's a little bit of feathering here or blurred. I want to break it up. So I just, created a noise here using black and white spots too. I increased the tiling. I sharpened it a little bit. Yeah, maybe it shouldn't be, maybe it should be a 0.5. Yeah, then I scanned it to get a little bit of it out. Then I blurred it a little bit to make it a little bit softer. Then I leveled it like this, pretty standard. And then I multiplied to create, let's find a good chunk of this. Okay, like right here, right? So then this is after, to kind of break it up. And then here I multiplied this result by the tile, because since I'm only multiplying on anything on the tile, and I multiplied it by, you know, the main graph, there's a slope here from the tile sloping. So I want to make sure that this slope catches on to this, because otherwise if I do, like, let's say I don't know, add, it's gonna do this, and it's like it's just adding on top. Also we get this stuff, which we do not want. But by doing multiply, it's basically catching the curve and it's applying the curve to this. So this thing kind of conforms to the slope of the edge of the tile. And then here I just kind of broke it up with tinier details. And then that's how we get this stuff here, which is supposed to resemble what I showed you in the reference just now. Okay, so that's 17. And then 18 here is pretty short, just this stuff. So let's bring 18 in. It's just some specs here. And this is set to add linear dodge. Just in case you missed them, here are the settings for this one. That. Alright, that's 18. And then 19's it's not as long as 17, but this is the last long one. Okay. So let's just do this one real quick. So we're gonna start with a blue noise fast. Should have probably been a. Let's make this a white. I think it's what I should have used. And then a histogram scan. Then a blur. Then an auto levels. And now we're creating these little like little dots, little nice and rounded dots. Then we scan it. Wait, why? Because it looks so tiny. Alright, I'll move some sliders around, but let's finish setting this up. Then we need a blend here. Set to subtract into a blur. Now we need to grab from our usual mask here, the grout mask, and we're going to pull into a blur. And then into a histogram scan. Okay, I realized why there's so few. Into a scan. And then I run it through another scan because I was a little too lazy to do it all in one, so I just added another. So here's the blur, and then I move the position up to try and get more white, and then I do it again to try and get a full max, almost a full position mask here. Then I invert it, and then this goes on top. So what I do here is I subtract the white because I only want these specks to be on the edges, on the grout, and on the edges of the tiles. Because what we're trying to do is, if we look at the edges, there's like a little bit of like, I guess like drops of the grout, like some specks that kind of got on top, like this stuff. So I need a mask that kind of captures the grout and a little bit of the edges. I don't want this stuff kind of being on top. I want to keep it to the edges. So I created this mask here. And we can probably turn down the contrast on this. Well, let's finish setting it up and then we'll come back here. Because I'm not going to see anything because it's not hooked up yet. Then after the blur, we do an auto levels. Well, let's finish it and let's see why it is the way it is. And then we're going to do the same setup as before, where we have a histogram range and a scan below it. The range is set to this, and the scan is set to this. Then that goes into a multiply. And then a slope blur. And a clouds 2 below it. And that feeds into the slope blur. And this one we set to blur for the mode. And then I have a scan afterwards. And then a levels, and it's in for 19. Alright, so now let's see what is happening here. Because it doesn't seem like it's much. Because it's almost like completely, oh, here's one of them. So where is this guy? That's right here, which is like right on the center. So if we look at our 3D and we go top mode, and then there he is. So this little bumpy guy is supposed to be, you know, what's going on here. And we can probably increase the amount or you know, their size by playing around with some of these. Okay, so we'll see that's like too massive. So not that one. Let's try maybe this one back here. Maybe we can move this one up a little bit. Maybe let's try like maybe 0.15. And then we have to like lower the levels here a little bit. Maybe let's do like 0.75. But yeah, these guys are being masked towards the edges. And then let's grab all the stuff we've done and just kind of move it back a little bit, get some more space. Okay. Then let's continue on. Oh, geez, this goes far. We're gonna pull all the way from back to number 15. There's a blur, this guy that we disconnected earlier. We're gonna pull this guy all the way to the front. Okay. Just to reuse the same noise, even though this is probably a little too extreme, but it's alright. Just delete that. These are the settings, and we'll plug that in there. Then we need a blend set to multiply, and we're gonna multiply this by our mask that we've been using the entire time, our grout mask. Because now I want to add number 20, which is minor grout specs. So you can see here, we just added some little dots, and of course we multiplied off the mask. That's why that one's cut like that, because of that. And then this is feeding into a levels. And then this is going to go onto the top here. Yep. So then if you see now there's these bunch of before, after. So now we have all these like, those little like bubbly guys here. Okay. I think that's, oh, we got last one, 21. Just plug it in. Okay, this one's pretty short. We're just gonna start with another white noise fast into a 2D transform, into a scan, into a blur, into a levels, and this is gonna go on top, and this is set to subtract. But yeah, right now it's subtracting over everything, so we need something in the opacity, and that is going to be our mask. I don't know why I did it this way. I don't know why didn't I just multiply it out? Yeah, let's do it that way. Oh, I guess I could have just done this for all of it. Instead of having to multiply with the thing, we could have just grabbed in this mask and say, hey, only do it inside. Instead of having to multiply by it or subtract it. But, you know, there's multiple ways to do things. And then let's see the before and after. Let's maybe do a little less on the blur, maybe like 0.2. Maybe even 0.15. 0.15, let's reduce the scan a little bit. And then let's reduce the intensity here. Maybe let's do like 0.175. Let's do 0.15. There we go. So now this is adding a little bit more noise into it. Okay. I think that's the end of height. I was going to do 2 videos, but I decided to just condense it into one. Alright, so let's save that. And let's look at our end result here. So again, I know this isn't like the most interesting material, but I was just trying to challenge myself to do something a little more realistic. Especially, these references are from my shower. I left it dirty just for this example, surely. But I did want to do something a little bit more realistic and something that I have like hands-on references so that I can really push the detail. But I think this is pretty good for height. There's a lot of information here that we're going to be referencing to color. And then a lot of this material is going to be roughness detail. This is very roughness heavy material. There's all these little roughness details that we're gonna try and mimic. So that'll be for the next part. But yep, this is the end of height. All right, guys. I'll see you guys on the next part.